Every journey begins with a single step, often in a direction we never expected. Hello and welcome to English Simplified, the place where we make learning English fun, inspiring, and connected to real-life stories. Today, I want to share a personal story that's not just about learning a language, but about discovering new passions, embracing challenges, and understanding life from different angles. You'll hear about how I found a hobby that changed my life, the people I met through it, the places I visited, and the decisions I faced about where to live and grow. Through this story, you'll also learn natural English expressions and ideas that will help you in your own conversations and writing. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this journey together. A new hobby is like planting a seed. It takes time, care, and patience to grow. A few years ago, I found myself at a crossroads. My life had settled into a predictable rhythm. Every day felt like a mirror of the last. Wake up, go to work, attend to responsibilities, and fall into bed, exhausted, only to repeat it all the next day. This routine had become a comfortable trap. My mind wasn't engaged, and my spirit wasn't alive. I went through the motions without really living. It was as though I was watching my life from the outside, detached and uninspired. I knew something was missing, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. I just knew that I needed something to reignite that spark within me, but I had no idea what. For as long as I could remember, I had been fascinated by painting. I would visit art galleries, mesmerized by the colors and brush strokes, marveling at how artists could create entire worlds from nothing more than their hands and a few supplies. Yet, every time I thought about picking up a brush myself, doubts flooded my mind. I'm not an artist. I don't have any special talent. I don't have time. What if I'm just not good enough? The excuses came easily, one after another. I told myself that I was too old to learn something new, that I'd never be able to master it, or that I'd be wasting my time on something I'd never fully enjoy. But deep down, there was a persistent voice that wouldn't go away, telling me that I could do it if I tried. That voice, small as it was my true desire to break free from the monotony of my life and embrace something new. I had spent so much of my time being afraid of failure, of not being perfect, that I never allowed myself the opportunity to fail. But what if failure was just another step in the journey? What if learning something new, even failing along the way, was the spark I needed? One afternoon, as I was scrolling aimlessly through social media, my eyes landed on a simple ad. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was just an invitation to join a beginner's painting class. It was one of those ads that you see and forget, but for some reason, it stayed with me. Could this be the opportunity I've been waiting for? My heart began to race at the thought. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of possibility. Without overthinking it, I clicked the sign up button. The moment I committed, I felt a flood of excitement and fear. This was real. I was going to try something new. I was stepping out of my comfort zone. It felt both thrilling and terrifying at the same time. The first class was intimidating. I walked into a bright, airy room filled with canvases, brushes, and tubes of paint, all set up on tables, ready for use. There were a handful of other students, some younger, some older, all of them seemingly comfortable and familiar with the process. I, on the other hand, felt completely out of my element. It was as though I had stumbled into a world where everyone else had been painting for years, and I was the only one who had no idea what to do. The instructor started by explaining basic techniques, and I could barely keep up. I listened intently, trying to absorb as much as I could, but it felt like I was drowning in a sea of unfamiliar terms. Layering, shading, blending. What do these even mean? I picked up my paintbrush with hesitation, unsure of how to hold it, unsure of what to do next. Everyone else seemed to have an ease about them, but I felt stiff, like I was holding a foreign object in my hand. I had this overwhelming fear that I was going to mess everything up, that everyone would notice how out of place I was. I felt like a failure before I even started, but I refused to let that voice take control. When it came time to paint, I jumped in with the hope that somehow it would all come together. I decided to start simple. A landscape. How hard could it be? The teacher had explained how to mix basic colors and apply them in layers. But as soon as I began to paint, it was clear that I had no idea what I was doing. The colors I chose were all wrong. The landscape that existed in my mind didn't translate onto the canvas. My strokes were erratic, too thick in places, too thin in others. The colors muddied together in a way that looked more like a smudge than a sunset. I couldn't even get the simplest elements right. There was no beauty, no harmony. It was an absolute disaster. I stared at the canvas, unsure whether to laugh or cry. I felt exposed, vulnerable, embarrassed. I had set myself up for failure, and here I was, confronting the reality of it. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this, I thought, but I couldn't bear the thought of quitting so soon. I had walked into that room, full of hope, determined to try. I wasn't about to let this first failure define my journey. The next few days were a roller coaster. I painted at home in solitude, questioning everything I had learned. The process was slow, frustrating. My hands didn't know what they were doing, and every time I looked at my work, I felt discouraged. I spent hours trying to blend colors, only to end up with a muddy mess. My shadows were too harsh, my lines too jagged. I wanted to give up. The temptation to throw in the towel was overwhelming. Why am I doing this? I asked myself. I'll never be good enough. I'm just wasting my time. But then I remembered the excitement I had felt when I first signed up for that class. That tiny, flickering spark of hope. I remembered why I started this journey in the first place. To try something new, to break free from the confines of my comfort zone, and to embrace the unknown. I refused to let that spark die out. Slowly, things started to improve. It wasn't immediate, and it wasn't dramatic. But little by little, I began to see progress. The first time I blended two colors without creating a muddy mess felt like a triumph. The first time I successfully added layers of paint and saw depth in my work, I could hardly believe it. It was like unlocking a secret door that had been hidden from me for so long. The process of painting became less about the end result and more about the joy of creating. Each brushstroke became an opportunity to learn, to grow, to enjoy the process, even when it didn't go as planned. And then, I completed my first painting that I was truly proud of. It was an abstract piece, with bold strokes of blue and yellow. The lines weren't perfect, and there were areas that felt too crowded, while others felt too empty. But when I looked at it, I didn't see failure. I saw progress. I saw growth. I saw the fruits of my persistence, my patience, and my willingness to embrace imperfection. In that moment, I realized something profound. The beauty of painting wasn't imperfection. It wasn't about creating something flawless, something that everyone would admire. It was about the journey. It was about trusting the process, embracing mistakes, and learning from them. Painting taught me that failure wasn't a roadblock. It was simply part of the road. Every mistake was a stepping stone to something greater, and the only way to move forward was to keep going, no matter how difficult or discouraging it felt. That painting became a symbol of my personal transformation. It wasn't just an abstract piece of art. It was a reflection of how far I had come, how much I had changed. It reminded me that growth doesn't happen in an instant. It's messy, it's full of mistakes, but it's beautiful. It's in those moments of struggle, of pushing through self-doubt, that we discover what we're capable of. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had uncovered a new part of myself, a part that was willing to embrace challenges, to take risks, and to trust that things would eventually fall into place, even if it took time. The journey wasn't about achieving perfection. It was about the courage to start, to keep going, and to trust that growth would come. Hobbies don't just teach you new skills. They also help you connect with others. When I first signed up for the art class, I'll admit, it felt like an impulse decision. I wasn't sure what I was really looking for. Maybe a distraction, maybe a little peace. Part of me imagined it would be solitary. Just me, a canvas, and the quiet satisfaction of mixing colors in perfect harmony. What I never expected was that this simple choice would quietly unfold into one of the most fulfilling chapters of my life. The community center stood at the corner of Maple Avenue, a humble brick building that almost seemed to blend into the background of the town. Its faded blue door squeaked open with a nudge, revealing a space filled with rustic charm. The faint aroma of turpentine and dried paint clung to the air, mingling with the woody scent of old easels and the slight musk of well-thumbed sketchbooks. My first evening there, I hesitated on the doorstep, clutching my new set of brushes like they were lifelines. My mind swirled with self-doubt. What if everyone is better than me? What if I don't belong here? I almost turned away, but then a soft hum of conversation and the rhythmic sound of brushes against canvas drew me in, like a gentle tide pulling me toward the shore. The studio was alive with quiet energy. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting warm, dappled patterns across the floor. Bottles of paint in every imaginable shade stood like rainbow soldiers on the supply shelves. Finished paintings hung proudly along the walls. Landscapes that breathed with color, portraits that captured fleeting emotions, abstracts that whispered untold stories. I took a seat by the window, hoping its view of the dusky sky would calm my nerves. As I unpacked my materials, I noticed my hands trembled slightly. My heart thudded louder than I cared to admit. First-time jitters? The question came from across the table. I looked up to see a woman, maybe in her early 40s, with curly auburn hair escaping her loose bun. Her apron bore the joyful chaos of paint splatters in every hue. Yeah, I replied, offering a nervous smile. She chuckled softly, like the sound of wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Don't worry, we all start somewhere. Besides, the messier you get, the more fun it is. Her name was Clara. She had a natural warmth, the kind of person who seemed to carry sunlight in her pocket. I felt an unexpected wave of relief wash over me. Sit with us, she said, gesturing to a cluster of seats nearby. As I settled in, others began to arrive. Jamal, a lively man with an infectious laugh that bounced off the studio walls, pulled up a chair beside me. Watch out for Clara, he teased playfully. She pretends to be friendly until she steals your favorite brushes. Only the good ones, Clara shot back with a grin. We all laughed, a real, unforced laugh. In that moment, the heavy weight of my nervousness started to lift. Our instructor, Mr. Evans, stepped to the front of the room, clearing his throat gently. He wore a corduroy jacket with worn elbows, and his eyes twinkled with a quiet passion for art. Remember, he said, there's no such thing as a mistake in this class. Only happy accidents waiting to happen. That became our motto. In the weeks that followed, what began as simple lessons in color theory and brush techniques blossomed into something far deeper. Our class wasn't just about creating art. It became a small community, almost like a family. We celebrated each other's progress, no matter how small. I remember one particular evening when it started to rain. The gentle patter of droplets against the windows created a peaceful soundtrack to our creativity. Maria, a mother of 3 who always arrived with paint smudges on her hands and kindness in her eyes, shared a story about how her youngest child had tried to help with her painting at home, resulting in a very colorful family cat. We all laughed until tears pricked the corners of our eyes. Sam, a shy teenager who barely spoke in the beginning, gradually began to share his work, breathtaking landscapes that captured not just the image, but the feeling of wide, open spaces and endless skies. He surprised us all one day when he shyly confessed, I like painting because it's the only time I feel like I can breathe. His words stayed with me long after class ended. Between brushstrokes and casual conversations, real friendships began to take root. During our breaks, we'd huddle around the old coffee machine, trading stories and advice over steaming cups of slightly burnt coffee. We shared triumphs, like when Clara sold her first painting at a local fair, and comforted each other through frustrations, like when Jamal's masterpiece accidentally turned into an abstract thanks to an uninvited elbow. Outside of class, our bond deepened. We started organizing weekend trips to art museums, spontaneous picnics in the park where we'd sketch the play of light through the trees, and late-night group chats filled with encouragement and silly memes about art struggles. One Saturday, under a sky streaked with the soft pastels of dawn, we gathered at the riverside for a plein-air session. As we painted, a gentle breeze teased at our canvases, and birdsong filled the air. I remember pausing, looking around at the faces of my newfound friends, and feeling an unexpected lump in my throat. This is what connection feels like, I thought. This is what it means to belong. Through this shared passion, I discovered more than just how to blend colors or create texture with a palette knife. I discovered how art, and any hobby, really, can become a bridge between people. It doesn't matter where you come from or how skilled you are. When you share a genuine passion, walls crumble and connections flourish. I walked into that class a stranger, full of self-doubt, and slowly, almost without realizing it, I became part of something beautiful. A community that celebrated each stroke of progress, that lifted me up when I doubted myself, and that painted my world with shades of joy I never knew were missing. And the most amazing part? It all started with a simple brushstroke. Sometimes, you need to step away from the chaos to find your true inspiration. Before I left for the coastal town, I often found myself trapped in a frustrating cycle. Wake up, feel uninspired, stare at a blank canvas, and go to bed wondering if my creativity had abandoned me forever. No matter how hard I tried, my ideas felt forced and lifeless. It was as if the noise of the city had built invisible walls around my imagination. On a whim, almost like a quiet plea for rescue, I booked the trip to the coastal town. I packed lightly, but I made sure to bring my sketchbooks and a small set of watercolors, just in case inspiration found me again. Secretly, I doubted it would, but from the moment I stepped off the bus, something shifted. The salty breeze greeted me like an old friend, brushing away the mental fog that had weighed me down. I inhaled deeply, tasting freedom in the air, the sound of seagulls, the rhythm of the waves, and the soft murmur of the townspeople going about their day felt like music, a quiet, comforting melody that I hadn't realized I missed. The town wasn't flashy or crowded. It was humble, authentic. Small fishing boats bobbed in the harbor, their paint chipped and faded by the sun, but still proud in their purpose. Weathered signs hung above family-owned cafes, and friendly shopkeepers waved to both locals and visitors alike. Life here moved at the pace of the tide, unhurried, steady, and full of quiet beauty. My days soon fell into a peaceful rhythm. Each morning, I woke to the soft glow of sunrise spilling through the curtains. I took long, thoughtful walks along the shoreline, my sketchbook always tucked under my arm. I stopped to capture the curve of a seashell, the playful darting of tiny crabs, or the way sunlight danced on the water. I wasn't trying to create masterpieces. I was simply observing, appreciating, and letting my creativity stretch its stiff limbs. One day, after a particularly serene morning, clouds gathered unexpectedly. The sky darkened, and rain began to fall, first as a gentle mist, then as a steady, refreshing downpour. Instead of running for cover, I stood beneath an awning outside a small cafe, watching as the raindrops created intricate patterns in the puddles. The town, usually bright and sun-drenched, took on a mysterious beauty under the rain. The colors deepened, and the streets seemed to quiet even more, as if inviting deeper reflection. As I watched, an elderly woman, the cafe owner, as it turned out, stepped outside and offered me a warm towel and a cup of tea. She had a knowing smile, as though she'd seen many dreamers like me pass through her town. "You're an artist, aren't you?" she asked softly. I nodded, a little embarrassed. "Trying to be," I replied. She chuckled gently. "Don't try too hard. Let this place speak to you. It always does." Her words lingered in my mind long after the rain stopped. That brief conversation opened the door to a new friendship. Over the next few days, I found myself returning to her cafe. She shared stories of the town's history, tales of shipwrecks, of artists who had found their muse among these shores, and of quiet triumphs from people who had learned to embrace the simple joys of life. She even showed me an old scrapbook filled with photographs of local festivals, painted sunsets, and smiling faces frozen in time. Inspired by her stories, I began sketching more freely, without worrying about perfection. I painted not just what I saw, but what I felt: the calm of the ocean, the strength of the fishing boats, the resilience of the people who called this town home. Slowly, my creativity began to flow again, like a tide returning to shore. But my time in the town wasn't without its moments of doubt. One evening, I found myself sitting alone on a rocky outcrop overlooking the vast, endless sea. I wondered if this peaceful escape was just a temporary illusion. Could I carry this sense of clarity back into my busy life? Or would it fade as soon as I returned to the city's chaos? As if in answer, a flock of birds took flight from the cliffs, their silhouettes sharp against the fading sunset. I watched them soar together, effortless and free. And in that moment, I understood freedom wasn't about the place. It was about the mindset I chose to carry with me. By the time my trip neared its end, I had filled nearly every page of my sketchbook, not just with drawings, but with memories, reflections, and lessons I wanted to hold on to tightly. The cafe owner gave me a parting gift, a tiny jar of sand from the beach, to remind you that you carry this place within you, no matter where you go. When I finally boarded the bus to leave, I felt a deep, bittersweet ache. But I also felt stronger, braver, renewed. I knew that the beach town had given me something far greater than artistic inspiration. It had given me a fresh perspective on life itself. Home is where the heart is, but is it where the opportunities are? Returning to my hometown after that peaceful trip felt like stepping into a dream. The familiar streets, the cozy corners of the local cafe, and the sounds of children playing in the park were all like old friends welcoming me back. It was comforting, but beneath the familiarity, there was a strange sense of restlessness growing inside me. I had always believed that the quiet, predictable rhythm of small-town life was everything I needed. It was where I grew up, where my family still lived, and where I had always felt safe. But now, the familiar comfort felt almost suffocating, as if the walls were closing in. The first few days after returning, I was wrapped up in the warmth of home. My mom's home-cooked meals, the laughter of my younger sister as she showed me her latest school project, and the small-town sense of community were comforting. Yet, as much as I appreciated all of this, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. It was early one morning when I sat on the porch with my mom, sipping tea as she rambled about the upcoming town festival. I could feel her watching me closely, sensing that something was weighing on my mind. "What's bothering you?" she asked, her voice gentle but insistent. "You're not yourself." I hesitated, unsure of how to explain. It wasn't that I was unhappy to be home. I was, but I couldn't ignore the pull of the life I had left behind in the city. The opportunities, the excitement, the challenges. It felt like I was living two lives, one foot in each world. I began, trying to find the right words. "I love being here with you and the family, but I can't stop thinking about everything I left behind. There's a part of me that feels like I'm missing out." I don't know if staying here is enough for me anymore." My mom didn't say anything for a moment. I could see the quiet concern in her eyes, the understanding that this was not a simple dilemma. "You've always been someone who wants more," she said softly, as if reading my thoughts. "But sometimes, more doesn't mean better. You've built a life here, and you're part of something important. Don't forget that." Her words lingered in the air, a bittersweet reminder of the life I had created in this small town. But despite the comfort, I knew that my heart was still restless. Later that day, I received an email from the city. It was from the prestigious gallery I had once dreamed of working with. They wanted me to submit my latest paintings for an upcoming exhibition. My heart skipped a beat. This was the opportunity one had always wanted, the one I had thought about during long nights in the city. But as much as I wanted to jump at it, I was aware of the price it might come with. The stress, the uncertainty, the sacrifices I would have to make. I showed the email to my mom, and her face lit up with excitement. "This is it," she said. "This is what you've been working towards." I nodded, but the weight of her words didn't feel as light as they should have. "I know, but it's not just about the art anymore, Mom. It's about everything else. The noise, the pressure, the feeling that I'm always chasing something but never quite getting there. I don't know if I want to go back to that." Her expression softened. "I understand, but you have to make your own decisions, sweetheart. Just don't forget that the choice you make is about more than just a career. It's about who you are becoming." That night, I couldn't shake the weight of my decision. I needed to talk to someone who understood what it felt like to leave everything behind. Sarah, my childhood friend, was the one person who could give me perspective. She had chosen to stay in the town, building a life that was steady, grounded, and full of love. We hadn't talked in ages, but I called her, knowing she'd understand. We met for coffee at the same little cafe we had visited countless times as teenagers. She looked just the same, her brown hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, her eyes filled with the warmth of familiarity. As we chatted about life and laughed about old memories, I felt a sense of relief, as though just being around her made the weight of my thoughts lighter. When I finally told her about the gallery's invitation and my conflict, she listened quietly, nodding as I spoke. When I finished, she didn't offer any advice immediately, but instead, she simply said, "I know what it's like to feel like you're meant for something bigger, something more. But I also know what it's like to build a life where you are, to find joy in the simple things." I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. I had always admired Sarah's ability to embrace the present, to stay rooted in her life, while I was constantly chasing something elusive. "You've always been the one to go after your dreams," Sarah continued. "I think you're meant for something big, something city-sized. But don't forget that you don't have to throw away what's here to get there." Her words stayed with me long after we said our goodbyes. I wasn't ready to leave my hometown entirely, but maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I could take small steps, balancing both worlds. I could explore the city again, take on more projects remotely, visit for gallery events and workshops. Maybe the key was not choosing one life over the other, but integrating both, taking the peace of home and combining it with the energy of the city. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that my fear wasn't of staying or going, but of making the wrong choice. What if I chose the city and regretted it? What if I stayed in my hometown and felt unfulfilled? The uncertainty was paralyzing. That evening, I went for a long walk along the river, the place where I had always found clarity in the past. The sun was setting, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. I stopped for a moment, watching the water flow past me, and for the first time in days, I felt a sense of peace. The answer didn't have to be all or nothing. I didn't have to leave everything behind to embrace the future, nor did I have to abandon the dreams I had in the city to appreciate the life I had here. I could have both, and that was enough for now. Big cities may be overwhelming, but they are also the birthplace of dreams. Even now, the hustle and bustle of city life linger in my thoughts. There's something magnetic about the way the city draws you in, with its pulse of activity, its constant buzz, and its promise of endless opportunities. I had spent years living in the city, and though I had taken a break to return home, I could still feel the city calling to me. No matter how much I loved the quiet rhythm of my hometown, I couldn't deny the allure of the city. The perks were undeniable. There was always something happening. On any given day, you could stumble upon an art exhibition at a gallery, a food festival at the park, or a concert on a street corner. The city thrived on its diversity of experiences, and it offered a never-ending buffet of new things to explore. Creativity was in the air. Late-night cafes turned into spaces where artists, writers, and dreamers congregated to share ideas and push each other forward. There was a tangible sense that anything was possible, that all it took was an idea, some courage, and a bit of perseverance. In the city, I had met so many people who were pushing the boundaries of what I thought was possible. Every coffee shop conversation could spark a collaboration. Every event was a chance to meet someone who could help you grow. The opportunities for professional growth were endless, but they also came with expectations. Everyone was striving for something, and it was easy to get caught in the relentless chase for success. There was an unspoken pressure to always be moving forward, to always be doing more, and the fear of falling behind was constant. I remember one evening, walking through the city's cultural district, feeling both excited and intimidated by the sheer magnitude of creative talent surrounding me. Artists displayed their works along the streets. Musicians played impromptu concerts in the parks, and performers showed off their skills in every corner of the city. It was a beautiful, vibrant place, but it also made me feel small. The city had an infinite supply of inspiration, but it also had a way of making you question whether you were doing enough. Everyone seemed to be constantly evolving, constantly moving towards something bigger, something greater. It was easy to feel left behind. Despite this, there was something about the city that made me want to keep pushing forward. I found myself constantly striving to reach higher, to explore more, to create more. The fast pace was addictive in a way. It made me feel alive, but it also wore me down. There were days when the pressure to succeed felt suffocating, like a weight on my chest that I couldn't shake off. There were moments when I doubted myself. Was I doing enough? Was I good enough? And then, just as quickly, the city's energy would pull me back in. I would remind myself of the opportunities that awaited me, of the people I had yet to meet, and the experiences I had yet to explore. But it wasn't just the professional opportunities that kept me drawn to the city. There was something about the social aspect of city life that was hard to ignore. The city offered a constant stream of events, places to go, people to meet. The social life was vibrant, fast-paced, and dynamic. There were always friends to meet, new connections to make, and interesting people to talk to. Whether it was a networking event, an after-work happy hour, or a spontaneous meet-up with someone you just met, the city had a way of bringing people together. Yet, the social scene had its own pressures. There was a subtle, unspoken expectation to always be on, to be ready to meet new people, to network, to attend the latest events. Socializing in the city was part of the game. It was a way to stay connected, to build your reputation, and to push yourself further. But it was also exhausting. I had to constantly juggle between work, creative projects, and social engagements, leaving little time for myself. I couldn't help but wonder if this was the way I was supposed to live. Always moving, always going, always striving. One weekend, I decided to visit the city again. I felt a familiar mix of excitement and anxiety. I had been away for a few months, But it didn't take long for the city's frenetic pace to sink back into my bloodstream. As I walked through the crowded streets, the sounds of traffic, the chatter of pedestrians, and the hum of city life seemed louder than I remembered. There was so much to see, so much to do, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling of being overwhelmed. I walked through the art district, passing familiar galleries and cafes that had once felt like my second home. The walls of the galleries seemed to whisper stories of all the creatives who had come before me, and the faces of the people milling about reminded me of all the things I had once wanted to be part of. There were still opportunities in the city, still places where I could carve out my niche. But it no longer felt as simple as it once had. At a cafe near one of my old favorite galleries, I ran into an old friend, Elena, who had also been part of the art scene in the city. We hadn't spoken in months, but the minute she saw me, she waved and walked over, her face lighting up with recognition. "It's so good to see you," she said, her voice warm with enthusiasm. "How's life? Have you been painting more? I was just thinking about you the other day." I smiled, feeling a wave of nostalgia wash over me. "It's been good. I've been painting. Yeah, but I've been away for a bit, back in my hometown. Just needed to reset, you know?" Elena nodded, her eyes sympathetic. "I get it. The city can be exhausting. It's easy to get caught up in the madness, but it's also where things happen. It's where the magic is." Her words hit me like a revelation. Yes, the city was exhausting, but it was also where dreams were made. It was where art thrived, where ambition turned into action, and where creativity was nurtured. But the city didn't give you anything without asking something in return. It demanded your time, your energy, and your willingness to keep up. Sometimes that meant sacrificing your peace of mind. We spent the next hour catching up, talking about our latest projects, about the art scene, and about the people we had met. I felt a spark of inspiration igniting again as I listened to Elena talk about her recent work. There was a part of me that still longed for the energy of the city, for the excitement of pushing boundaries and the adrenaline that came with working on projects with passionate people. The city made me feel like I was part of something larger, a creative force that couldn't be stopped. But as I said goodbye to Elena and walked back through the crowded streets, I realized something. The city had changed since I had left. It still held the same magic, the same excitement, but it had also grown more overwhelming, more demanding. I had learned that while the city had given me so much, it had also taken a lot. The challenge now wasn't just about finding my place in the city. It was about learning how to navigate its chaos without losing myself in it. That evening, as I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by sketches and canvases, I realized that balance was the key. The city would always be there, offering its opportunities, its challenges, and its pressure, but I didn't have to let it consume me. I could take the best parts of city life, the inspiration, the energy, and the connections, and leave behind the parts that drain me. I didn't need to be part of the frantic rush to succeed. I could carve out my own space, take my time, and create on my terms. The city didn't have to define me, but it could still inspire me. And that, I realized, was enough. In the end, it's not just about where you go or what you do, but about the journey of becoming who you are meant to be. I hope my story has inspired you to explore your own passions, take chances, and see every experience as a step toward growth. Life is full of opportunities, whether it's learning a new skill, connecting with others, or simply appreciating the beauty around you. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep improving your English with real, meaningful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to English Simplified. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need a little inspiration today. Glowing star, and I'd love to hear from you. What hobby have you always wanted to try? Drop your answer in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going and support each other on this journey. See you in the next video.